welcome to Taking It to the Streets. I'm your host, Andy Goldman from sunny St. Pete, Florida. This is the show where we take it to the streets, knowing if we don't, the streets will take it to us.
Welcome to Taking It to the Streets. It's Andy Goldman, and this is our weekly segment with Rich Beem. The show is, of course, brought to you by Wrightwood Medical, 773-848-7100 or www.wrightwoodmedical.com. Your home for the best in ultrasound equipment, refurbished, of course. Rich, you deserve all the credit, my friend. This is becoming a broken record, and trust me, this is not rehearsed. Rich, I think, again, you got to go back and look at a previous podcast, but last week's was the most impressive. Let's just cut to the chase. You, on this podcast, said, you know what? I do like Scottie Scheffler. Give me the three ball that he's playing in, which includes Siwoo Kim and Jordan Spieth. And wow, a couple of questions. First off, how deep was your love, so to speak, to steal one from the Bee Gees for that three ball? Of course, you like Scheffler, but Spieth and Kim is the question. And the second question is, where does that performance rank for Scottie in the history of man?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, great question. And first of all, I'll start this off. You and I were talking a little bit earlier today. And listen, I know that you have this for, some folks that want to have tips, gambling and this and that. Listen, being associated with the PGA Tour in the role that I'm at, I can't do head-to-head matchups with you. I know that we chatted about it. I can't do any head-to-head. I'm just saying, listen, I like these guys this week, and for whatever reason. And again, I do zero homework. I haven't even seen the golf course this week. I've got my three picks. But listen, this is for us. This is entertaining for you and me. If anybody at home wants something deeper, then they're going to have to go through the people that you pick on your own, because I can't, sadly, I don't think I can do that. I'm going to find out from the PGA Tour what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do. But listen, I'd love to do the individual picks, but I like just picking these three guys. So the reason why I picked those guys is, and I think I mentioned this last week, is just the simple fact that they're all pals. They play a lot of golf in the Dallas area, and you're not going to find three guys that are probably more at ease or more relaxed.
And I didn't know that until I saw the chest bump between Spieth and Siwoo.
And so I knew that they played a lot of golf together. I knew they're all residents of Dallas. I didn't realize how close of friends they were, but I understood beforehand how much golf that they did play together. And then, of course, it turned out to be much more than I ever anticipated. But I just knew that those three would be so comfortable over the first 36 holes, which is exactly what you want to be. You can't win it on the opening 36, but you certainly can lose it. And none of those guys, they all grind. I mean, two of them had to grind it out to make the cut, and then needed a little bit of help with Mother Nature having to come back on Saturday morning because the weather wasn't quite the same. But Scottie Scheffler, found his comfort zone early and often. And I got to say this, Andy, I've been around a lot of golf in my life, and I've seen some of the best. I watched Tiger 3 shoot 62 and a half. I mean, he registered to 63, but I saw him shoot 62 and a half at Southern Hills. But that was with his B game. I mean, he chipped in, I think, once or twice, made a long putt or two. But I mean, he went on to win in the tournament. But what Scottie did this last weekend, I've never seen anything like this. Because to start off with 61, 63, you have to forget everything that you said. How do you follow up a great round with another great round? Led the first day by 2 strokes and then doubled it, but he had the lowest round by 2 strokes both Thursday and Friday, that's unheard of. So actually leading by 6 going into Saturday. But to keep your foot on the pedal and to not let down. And the thing I find to be most impressive was on Sunday when he's playing with Eric Van Rooyen, and Eric is playing outstanding golf, and Scottie just matches him birdie for birdie. Eric goes out trailing by 8 and shoots 6 under par on the front 9 and doesn't gain a stroke. Not one stroke.
I'm so glad you mentioned the Beemer, because lost in the postscript of this incredible tournament that really is going to be talked about for generations to come. I think what we saw just now at the Byron Nelson this past weekend is Van Rooyen. And I bring the analogy back to horse racing, which we're big on the SHIP program. There's a great trivia question I'm going to share with you. Horse race that most people just don't know the answer to it. There are 3 horses in the 151 years of the Kentucky Derby that have broken a 2-minute mile-and-a-quarter race. 3 horses that have broken the 2-minute barrier in the 151 years of the race. It really reminds me of Van Rooyen. It's a bit of a trick question. Obviously, Secretariat's one of the answers.
Big Brown?
No, Big Brown ran a big race. I'll give you a couple other tries. If I don't think you'll get this.
I'm not a huge.
I don't think so.
So
the
yeah,
the other horse is a horse by the name of Monarchos, who ran about 2000-ish. That's his year, his class. The famous horse that he passed, that was a great, great horse, was Point Given. He was in the Point Given class. Point Given was really the first Bob Baffert big name horse.
I remember Point Given. I remember the name.
Unbelievable in the Preakness and the Belmont. Did not win the Triple Crown, but he kind of set up the pace along with a horse named Congaree.
Oh yeah,
Monarchos, who was a gray horse, that comes swooping down. He ran like a 159 and 4-ish kind of monster race. Here's the trick part. Sham is also a horse that broke the 2-minute barrier, but he finished second to Secretariat. He was a 3-year-old in the wrong time in history. My point being, that
Secretariat won by what, 40 lengths?
Well, he didn't. Well, Sham ran a monster.
No, I know, but did Secretariat win by like 40 lengths or something?
Oh, that was the Belmont. That was the Belmont.
That was the Belmont that he did that. Okay. Yeah. That's right. The final race of the 3. Yeah. I'm sorry. You're right.
It was not at the Derby. Sham was.
No, you're right. Yeah.
There
my history.
I mean, I don't quote me, but I bet you Sham lost by 4 lengths in the Derby. Ran a monster race. Decided to be a 3-year-old at the wrong time in history. Point being, that's how I felt about Van Rooyen.
Yeah.
It's a monster effort that dude put in.
Shot 63 the final round and didn't gain a single stroke on Scheffler. And it was just like, he threw everything he could at him. It was amazing. I mean, it truly was amazing to watch. And Scottie never flinched. He hit, the 2 worst shots that he hit on Sunday were with wedges in his hand. He hit a wedge on the 3rd hole and hit a wedge on 17. But he also followed them up with some of the most amazing long iron shots I've seen. He hit a 4-iron from 225 on the 4th hole to about 6 feet. He hit on 15 from 218. I think he hit a 5-iron to about 3.5 feet. I mean, it was just like, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it was absolutely incredible.
Rich, Vegas would answer this question differently probably than you. I want to ask this question, and then we'll turn the page. We'll go on to some other topics we got for today before we move on to the tournament. The Scottie, I want to word this correctly. That effort that he had where Van Rooyen shoots 63 and doesn't gain a stroke. If it's Ludwig, if it's Xander, if it's Rory, you get where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not Van Rooyen. Is the outcome different? So you don't think it has any, that there's no intimidation that Scottie has towards Van Rooyen, so hence.
So are you saying that if Rory goes out and is chasing by 8 and he goes out and shoots 30, or are you saying that?
Yeah, Scottie's hands get a little tighter knowing that it's Rory chasing him and not Van Rooyen?
No, scores don't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter. Whoever's that ball doesn't matter. Whoever playing the course, it does not matter. So no, I think that it wouldn't have mattered who was there. I mean, Tiger Woods could have been there. Jack Nicklaus probably could have been there. And I guarantee you Scottie's going to perform the same exact way. He just has this demeanor about him that he just doesn't care. I mean, that's the only way I think that you can shoot 31 under par on a golf course like that, because it's one of the longer par 71s on tour, if not the longest par 71. And it's no pitch and putt. I mean, like, he had long irons like 10, 11, 12, 13. Those are all proper length holes for these guys. And he's not going in there with anything less than a 7-iron, I think, on Sunday, with the exception of 11, I think. 11, I think he had a little bit shorter in. But I mean, with the winds coming back out of the north and doing one of those holes, I mean, it's a proper test. So you got to keep your foot on the gas the entire time and to continue to make birdies and eagles when somebody's chasing you, when somebody's throwing birdies and eagles at you. And he just didn't care. He didn't care who it was or whatnot. He had a mindset, and nobody was going to take that tournament from him no matter what.
Yeah. And Van Rooyen did play the part of Sham. Because
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
and what a great performance by Van Rooyen.
Yeah, I mean, and I was actually texting his daddy yesterday. He just goes, "I'm so annoyed that we had to play with that guy because they shot 63." He goes, "We only had the tee box 3 times on Sunday. They shoot 63. Usually, you shoot 63. You're gonna be first off. That's what you want as a golfer. You want to go ahead and you want to put the heat on this guy. And 15 times, Scottie had the tee box. Yeah, it's mind boggling. It's mind boggling. But it was a great Sunday. There was birdies galore. The weather was perfect. The course was, if anybody's going to score, it's going to be on that Sunday with light winds and whatnot. But still, when you're leading by 8 and you still go out and you shoot 63, that just is not. That doesn't happen. That's it's inconceivable, as they would say in the what's that movie, Princess Bride. I love that line. Inconceivable.
Well said, Beemer. Well said.
This episode of Taking It to the Streets is brought to you by Wrightwood Medical, the leader in used and refurbished medical equipment. Wrightwood specializes in ultrasound equipment, but can also be your vendor of choice when sourcing lower cost alternatives for your operating room suites, scanning the entire medical spectrum. From single physician offices to larger hospitals, Wrightwood is the lower cost solution for your everyday medical equipment needs, and all of Wrightwood's equipment comes with warranty. You can reach Wrightwood directly at www.wrightwoodmedical.com. That is with a W, WRIGHTWOOD medical, or 773-848-7100. Again, 773-848-7100. If it's used medical equipment, it's Wrightwood Medical.
All right, so let's switch gears here. A couple days ago, or it's now been actually more than a couple days, but I interviewed, and I told you about this, Kevin Cook. He was the former editor-in-chief at Golf Magazine. He was a senior editor at Sports Illustrated, incredibly well decorated. He's written about 15 novels. Just to show you this guy's range, the last couple of years, he had 2 books come out. One was on the Tiger Slam, and one was on the uprising at Waco. So this is quite a range in his brain for content. And I love people like that. I really don't think anybody should be pigeonholed into one genre. I love that. I love when a guy can do that. And that's who this guy is. Now let's take it a step further. I really had him on the podcast because I wanted to talk to him about his book that came out in 2011 on Titanic Thompson, who I'm fascinated with.
Yeah.
Now you used to be in a different life, the assistant pro at El Paso Country Club, which is notorious. And I think Titanic traipsed into that country club multiple times. It's known for the Ray Floyd, Lee Trevino matchup.
That was actually Horizon. But yeah, there were still a number of places. Yeah, there were still a number of cash games at El Paso Country Club way back in the day before TV cameras and all the other fun stuff that we have now.
Why El Paso Country Club? Why did the old timers like Titanic and people like that know that that's where the action was?
I don't really know. I think that, a little bit of the Wild West. El Paso's kind of out in the middle, about kind of on its own little island out there in West Texas. But, I think because El Paso Country Club was probably one of the best courses in that area for the longest time and still is. And so I think that, when you're going across from Dallas out to California, Arizona, wherever you're going, that's, kind of a place to stay. I think it's 8 hours from Dallas. And then another 6 hours to Phoenix and 11 hours to LA. So it kind of makes sense to stop off in El Paso. And it just kind of, goes to, happen that there's just enough action in that town where, you get some notorious kind of guys that made money, who knows which way and where. But, it was just always kind of an outpost, more or less, for guys, going from east to west or vice versa.
What did you know of, or did Titanic clearly make his impact? Of course, he had to have. That people still talk about him when you were an assistant pro.
I don't think Titanic was as much as Trevino, because Trevino basically started his career because of a guy named Bill Eschenbrenner. Bill Eschenbrenner was a head pro for many, many moons at El Paso Country Club. And when Lee was trying to get his tour card, Back in the day, you need to be a member of the PGA Tour, PGA of America, in order to play on the PGA Tour. And so Lee was trying to get his apprenticeship, but I mean, this guy could flat out play. And so Bill went to the PGA board and says, listen, if this guy doesn't make a great PGA Tour professional, I'll hand you in, my credentials right now, and I'll never work another day in the golf business for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. So basically, Bill Eschenberger put everything that he had on the line because he believed in Trevino that much. And obviously, it turned out very well. And they're still very, very close friends to this day. But the Ray Floyd Trevino match, that was out at Horizon. But everything you hear about that story is absolutely spot on. In fact, I was listening to Ray Floyd tell a story about it. And he just goes, you know what? After shooting 65, 66 at this guy, or 65, 64, and I couldn't beat him, I'm like, you know what? I'm done. This guy's he's too good. But we had more stories about Trevino going around, and it didn't, and it wasn't too many super interesting stories. But I mean, Trevino would come back and play the pro president, which is like basically the president of the club, of any club, and the head pro. So you get all these guys come around. He'd come back and play that. That was the Monday after the Masters. So he'd fly home after getting him playing at the Masters, and he'd play in this pro president for 2 days at El Paso Country Club. It was just kind of one of those things. But I think more than anything else, the gambling stories that I found at El Paso Country Club were, I won't say buried, but they were kind of put on the back burner. But, every once in a while, something would pop up. But talking about your buddy who wrote the book, the biggest gambling games I ever heard about was Anthony Country Club. And when I say country club, that is a very, very loose term.
That's a muni that called itself a country club.
And it's a 9-hole. It's 9-hole. It
was nice.
Yeah, this one is like the third hole is a par 3. It's 90 yards, but you hit it over a road. And it's a completely blind shot. Yeah.
So it's very generous to call it a country club.
It's very generous to call it a country club. But, about once a month, you'd get these 4 guys pulling up in these beat up pickup trucks and overalls and shirts stained and work boots. And they'd pull their clubs out of the back of the truck, and they all had staff bags. They all had these big staff bags, and they'd all ride their own golf carts. And the staff bags, so basically you had a cotton farmer, you had a dairy farmer, you had a pecan farmer, and a chili farmer. That's basically the genre of these guys. And they're all working on the ground. They're all hands on deck. And so they would get together about once a month and, again, show up and just nothing fancy. They're not even collared shirts, I don't think. And they'd unload their golf bags out of the back of their pickup trucks and throw it on the carts. But in the belly of the staff bag, if you look at staff bag, the belly of it where you kind of keep rain gear and whatnot, these guys carried cash and a gun.
Wow.
They probably carried somewhere in the neighborhood of probably $100,000 at a time, if not more, maybe less, but it was pay up or have a gun drawn on you.
Wow.
And everybody paid up. But I mean, these guys would make so much cash from their businesses, and again, I don't know exactly how it all happened.
No, but they were farmers. But
they were farmers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cash. So these guys would show up and they would play golf, and they'd play 9 holes, and that was it, because it's just a 9-hole golf course. And you settle up, and then they take off and, meet again in another month or so. That was the biggest games and the funny ones that I've ever heard of. I mean, I played golf a few times for, 500 hole when I couldn't afford to. And, that was about as big as I ever got. I mean, you could lose $1,000 a day easily if you didn't play good at El Paso Country Club, but it wasn't like you could lose tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, you could find a game if somebody wanted to, because there's plenty of rich folks out there, that have big safes in their house, and, but I didn't see a whole lot of big money games. There's also another money game with the bookies up top at Coronado Country Club, which is always kind of fun. But again, very rarely did you get anything, that required massive duffel bags of cash in trunks being stored away. Again, though, I mean, the stories about Titanic Thompson, I got to get that book, because my dad used to tell me stories about it, and I was always fascinated by it. Some of the bets that he would make, but he would plan them, months in advance. And it's just crazy. It was just interesting the way that this guy thought in order to win a bet. It's almost like a magician. a magician. He takes his time setting up the trick for one moment in time, and you're just like, holy cow. But yeah, there wasn't a ton of stories, sadly, around Titanic Thompson that I really heard of when I was working at El Paso.
I'm fascinated by it. And I'm fascinated by that kind of content. He was the inspiration.
Yeah, me too.
He was the inspiration of Sky Masterson, and Damon Runyon wrote the character of Sky Masterson for Guys and Dolls. The word is that that's Titanic Thompson.
Well, Titanic Thompson, I used to play, they used to play golf against Doyle Brunson, back in the day, back at
the precursors to Billy Walters.
They're
that's who they are.
Precursor to Billy Walters is exactly right. But they just did everything in the back room where I'm sure guys got pistols drawn on them, got beat up for winning, beat people up that, beat them and this and that. So, I mean, it would have been, very violent. There's no doubt about that. But, if I remember correctly, though, Titanic Thompson, wasn't he like a 6'5", and he was a big hulking guy too, right? So,
yeah.
But I mean, I remember listening to Doyle Brunson tell a couple of stories about he and Titanic Thompson, going around the barbecue circuit, playing these little Calcutta tournaments here and there. And the Calcutta events, now those were a real deal. I mean, that's when you can get into the $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 buying a professional. I know back when I was, in college, I went to go play in a tournament in, I think it was Artesia, New Mexico, and went in there, and our team, me and my partner, we went for like $3 or $4 grand because we're kind of under the radar a little bit. But the local team that was supposed to do well, they went for 30 grand, and we smoked them, and we took our cash and we sprinted out of town.
Interesting.
Or at least the guys that made the bet, they won because they brought me in, and nobody heard of me. I was just playing in college golf, and they hadn't heard of me. And I went out the second day, and I think I pretty sure I shot 29 on the backside to wax.
Yes, right.
Oh, I mean, listen,
that's like when it case even. But
when I was playing, and because these guys were firing, because the crowd was so behind these guys, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to shove it right up their ass, and I did. I used to love doing that. I used to love that more than anything else.
Unbelievable. You like when the crowd's against you.
I liked it when they were against me back before all the, the hoopla with this and that, like, because people wouldn't know me back in the day. And, and if they were rooting for their two local guys, God bless them.
It's funny because I see you as such the forever man. I know you were very beloved to this day by people like me and the golf.
Right, but I mean, but
America,
that's just because of the fact that, what it is that I've done. But I mean, like, back in the day, college, even just out of, working at El Paso Country Club, it wasn't like a household name, and so if people were rooting against me, goddamn right, I took it personally, and I was going to show you exactly who they were up against.
I love it. I'll give you a quick little promo. So folks, if you're watching this, I do have a podcast coming out with Kevin Cook. We're going to talk about Titanic Thompson, his book. But here's another one that's going to come out, is with an old college buddy of mine that people out there might have heard of. His name's Pete Jones. Now, the name I didn't ring a bell, but here I'll tell you Pete Jones. Pete Jones is the guy that won the first Project Greenlight, which was that project that was started by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, where they bankrolled a movie. And Pete Jones, we went to Mizzou together. And he's gone on to a really fascinating career. He's done about 5 or 6 movies. His last movie was with Bill Murray and Russell Crowe. It's called The Greatest Beer Run Ever. Watch it.
Oh, yeah.
It's on Apple. You can watch it. That's Pete Jones's last movie. The Farrelly brothers are like his directing group.
Yeah, sure.
But he's got the rights to do the Bill Walters movie. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, Pete, but it all falls on the shoulders of Mark Wahlberg as the lead playing Bill Walters. And I don't think I could think of a better guy. So that's in the works as we speak.
That's interesting, because I know that Mark Wahlberg actually said that he's going to try and reduce, or some of his roles, he's going to put more of a positive spin on it, or no less violence, less guns and things like that. But if you know the book, Billy Walters, there's nothing but violence in the first 30 minutes of his book.
Rich, I thought it was going to be like a breach of like, I can't play such a poor character. And then I look at Wahlberg's parts that he's played. And as long as Irish Mickey Ward is one of the eyes that he's playing in The Fighter.
I know. And Billy Christian Bale. Christian Bale. Did Christian Bale win an Academy Award for that? He should have. That was unbelievable.
The other woman did. That played the
Yeah, she was great. Yeah, what a great movie that was. Holy cow.
I love it. All right, so let's move this along, Beemer. We're playing this week. Done some homework on this Philadelphia Cricket Club. It fascinates me. It's an old 1890s layout. Tillinghast, who was a
Tillinghast.
How do you pronounce it?
A.W. Tillinghast.
Tillinghast.
Yeah.
And he would go back and forth. This is just from the research I've done. He would go back to Scotland. He was very influenced by courses in Europe and rubbed shoulders with old Tom Morris. And all that to say, I think this is going to play tough this weekend, where this is going to be like a European-ish kind of thing, par 70. They're not going to get the hide on par 5s with a big club. You take them there, Rich. Where do you go?
Well, it's funny because I haven't been here before, so this is my first look at it this week. I did actually look at some stuff on YouTube to kind of get a vibe for it, and it's exactly what I expected to see. And so you're right. I mean, I looked at this, and all of a sudden, it screamed Marion to me, where Justin Rose won. And when I was making my picks, I'm sitting here going, golly, how do I get any Americans on my team here? Because I picked my first go through. I had two Englishmen. I had all the Europeans. I had all Europeans right up the get-go. I'm like, no. I got to do something a little bit different, Okay. It is for me. Again, this is more about entertainment here, right? And I haven't seen the golf course whatsoever, but it does scream
European,
no doubt. And so, when I was looking at it and trying to figure out, I was looking at the routing, how some of the dog legs go. Is there more left to right or right to left? Were the par 3 lengths, this and that. And so I'm just kind of like, okay, if I'm playing this, what do I need to do? Well, first thing you gotta do is you got to put the ball in the fairway. I mean, it's 7,100 yards long, par 70. So they're going to have that rough pretty nasty. So you're going to have to put the ball in the fairway. So I took that into account, but what it all boiled down to is I picked two guys, one European, a Canadian and an American. And the only reason I picked the American is because he loves this part of the world. And I think he's played very well. He's played very well in this area, but he loves this part of the world, loves the golf course up here. So I got Tommy Fleetwood, Corey Connors, and our El Capitan, Keegan Bradley this week. Those are my 3 picks, I think, to take home the bacon.
In that order, Rich? I mean, you've been
Tommy to win, because again, I think this is his week. I've just been looking at him. He's been trending. I think he's got this new putter. If he sticks with the mallet, I think he's going to have a lot of confidence. He would have gone home for 2 weeks and put a lot of good work in at home. And I just looked at this layout, and I can see him driving the ball in the fairway. I can see him knocking on the green, and I can see him making the putts. The last 2 holes are dogleg from right to left, par 4s. He's got no issue with moving it from right to left. And I'm thinking, if he's coming down the stretch, he's feeling a little bit of it. He can get up there with that driver, that mini driver, and just kind of turn that thing from right to left and handle the pressure. But I literally, when I first saw it, just looking at the flyovers on YouTube, the first person that came to mind was Tommy Fleetwood.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. So my picks, we'll go back a week. First off, with my picks, we talked about reverse line movement.
Yes.
Talked about when the money's coming this way and the line's this way. 2 of the 3 reverse line movements won.
Oh, nice.
So Ben An was the loser. He was straight up. He was paired off against Sung Jae-im. That's the loser. Steve Yeager, winner over Bo Hostler. And Jake Knapp, who ran a sneaky good one last weekend.
Yeah, he did.
A winner over Cam Davis, both reverse line movement. I can't do that today, folks, because we're doing this at Tuesday, 5:30-ish Eastern time. Last week we did it this time Wednesday. to have more time to really observe whether or not there indeed is a reverse line movement.
And we can do this next weekend. We can do this next week at 5:00 for you if you're on to, so you can see the reverse line. We're going to do it next week.
I want to just talk for a second, but briefly. The method to my madness is that, and I'll give you my 3 head-ons. I look for value. I look for like a stock. Why a golfer is being respected by the offshore as well as Vegas for seemingly no reason. So I pick out the 5 metrics that I think are valid to this tournament.
Okay.
And I basically create my own model. Okay. So I'll make this brief. The 5 metrics this week: strokes gained approach, strokes gained total, strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained par 4, and birdies.
Yeah.
Strokes gained birdies. Again, and then, so those are 5 metrics. And then I look for guys that are absolutely trending horribly against those 5 metrics and are favored. So with that said, Austin Eckroat over Alex Noren.
Alex is coming off of an injury. So this is his first tournament back maybe this year.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Really been gone the whole year?
I think so. I know that he had a, I'm checking it out real quick, but I know he had an injury. So,
okay. The second one is Tony Finau over Akshay Bhatia.
Okay.
Those of you that follow the show know I love Bhatia. Do not love him this week. This is a really cheap Tony Finau. This is a lookout Tony Finau, as far as I'm concerned. This is it to me screams where Tony's gonna show up this weekend. Just as a editorial note. I don't know why. I don't like to talk that way, but a gut feeling on Tony Finau. And the last one, a little bit to what Beemer talked about, horse for the course, gonna like what he gets. Adam Hadwin over Brian Campbell. So if you do the homework, folks, you'll see that all 3 of those guys, Eckroat, Finau, and Hadwin, are extremely out of form.
Yeah. Here's another guy too, and I don't know what the metrics looks like, but I'm looking at the area. He grew up on a golf course kind of like this, I believe. That would be Cam Young. Cam Young's dad.
I'm looking long. Yeah. I loved him this week.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like he was another guy. And again, it had everything to do with the golf course and what he had kind of grown up around. His dad is the head pro at Sleepy Hollow. So he had played a golf course kind of like this, where it's a little quirky on and around the greens. The sight lines are completely different than what we see normally, or these guys see from week to week. So he was actually one of the guys that I was kind of mulling around in my brain, but that's why I took Keegan Bradley over him, to be fair.
Interesting. All right, we'll be back next week, and we're just breadcrumbing to get to that PGA, which is going to be unbelievable this year. I'm so excited for it. Beemer, this was a joy, as always.
Yes, absolutely. My pleasure. Looking forward to next week already.
Absolutely. We'll see you next week on Take It to the Streets.
Goodbye from St. Pete. And remember, folks, you're only as good as your last trade. So never too high, never too low, till we meet again.